Alright, welcome guys. We're here to talk about the box office, and is 28 Years Later The Bone Temple a bomb? Because many people will be suggesting it is. I haven't gone round to look. Okay, I'm just guessing. Most people are suggesting it's a bomb. It's not. And I'll explain why. I know it sounds like cope. It's really not. You've got to look at the business dealings between Sony and Netflix recently to show that it's just not a bomb. Sony have effectively... How to say this? Sony has future-proofed all of their theatrical releases. That's it. That's basically what they've done. So it's not a bomb because they have guaranteed secondary revenue streams for all of their films, which is mad. It's a huge deal for Sony. Really, really, really good. So let's take a look, right? It could have done better for sure. Like, of course it could have. But it's not a bomb, and I'll explain why. But let's get into it, right? So, few things to go over here. Apparently, Avatar: Fire and Ash is still, massively winning the box office, which, sure, whatever. Here we go. James Cameron's Na'vi sent Sony's Infected running away from the top spot of the box office, right? But not by a huge amount, okay? Avatar: Fire and Ash pulled in $17.2 million over the 4-day fifth weekend, whilst 28 days later, 28 years later, but all right, 28 years later, what are you doing, Deadline? 28 years later, The Bone Temple came in below its 20 million plus tracking projections, with the studio reported $15 million, which isn't great. Like, that's not great. It would be, I mean, they'd probably want more, obviously, right? But it doesn't matter. This is the thing. It just doesn't matter. And they say this, by the way, no other studio sees it there. Sony is calling the 3-day at $13 million, which makes it the second highest opening in the Danny Boyle, Alex Garland franchise after last June's 28 Years Later, $30 million. So it's significantly less than the last one. And the last one burned a lot of people, and I knew it was going to do that. That this movie wasn't going to be massively successful at the box office. I think word of mouth will get around and people will say, no, this movie's actually worthwhile watching. But we'll see, we'll see. So they say this, those numbers for The Bone Temple are a disappointment. Not Sony, not theatres, not anybody wanted to see the movie at that level. It's just not a bomb, right? And I'll explain why. Sony and Netflix have got a $7 billion plus exclusive deal. Sony has literally, they're so smart. All of their future movies have a secondary revenue source. $7 billion just to stream stuff on Netflix. It's basically, it's the equivalent of, if you're old, right? I say old. I mean, I remember Blockbuster. If you remember Blockbuster, it's the equivalent of a movie studio, Sony, going to Blockbuster and saying, hey guys, can you guarantee every single one of my movies at X, Y, and Z amount of price rentals for the foreseeable future? And Blockbuster going, yeah, sure. That's what they've done. But it's just upfront cash. It's mad. So it's not a bomb. It's a bomb on a logistical terminology for its first revenue stream, right? It is a bomb from that. But Sony's not going to give a shit. They're not going to care at all. Case in point, they've already greenlit the other movie. They don't care. And I loved that film. I thought it was a brilliant film. I know we're early into 2026, but strong contender for one of the best of the year. One of my favourites of the year, at the very least. A superb film. So let's get into a little bit of this, because this is an interesting deal. And if no one else is talking about this in relation to 28 Years Later, then they're not worth their salt in the commenting space of movies. They're just not. So Netflix and Sony Pictures Entertainment said Thursday that they've hammered out an industry-first $7 billion plus worldwide pay-one licensing deal for Sony's movies, right? Which will stream on the Netflix service around the globe following their full theatrical and home entertainment windows. So they've still got home entertainment windows. They're still being sold elsewhere. But they just all go to Netflix afterwards. That's a significant jump in SPE's theatrical output value since its 2021 Netflix Pay 1 agreement. The big deal here is the overseas portion of the Pay 1 deal. Sony movies will no longer be split among a myriad of parties in their offshore Pay 1 window. Netflix and Sony didn't provide financial terms on the deal, but it's $7 billion plus. So the new global pact isn't a shocker. Sony movies such as Anyone But You and It Ends With Us have continually been among Netflix's top 10 most watched films in any given moment. Not to mention the streamer had Sony's Animation's K-pop Demon Hunters as a first-run title on the service, and that pick became the streamer's most watched movie at 500 million views. Also, its first #1 box office hit, $19 million in theatres. Similar to the previous Sony Netflix deal, Pay 1 deal, the streamer will continue to license rights to select SPE feature film and TV library titles. Word was that Sony was pursuing an offshore Pay 1 deal with Amazon, but Netflix stepped up here in a major way, and the deal is a combination of the domestic and partial offshore Pay 1 deal the streamer had with Sony, first hatched in 2022 at a value of $2.5 billion over 5 years. That's mad. It's absolutely mad. So they don't care, is the long and short of it. Sony won't care about this. They would have preferred more money, but they have got a massive, massive bump stop between them and a really hard landing on any of their box office failures now. So yeah, it's not great. They would have wanted more, but it's not. Sony's not going to care, right? They've just secured a $7 billion plus payday. This is included in that. They're not going to give a shit. They're just not. Right? Every single movie they have now has a secondary revenue stream. Guaranteed. So they don't care. But they say this, right? On the positive side, the Near DaCosta directed, Alex Garland penned and Danny Boyle produced fourth title in the British zombie series gets an A- cinema score with a very good 72% definite recommend on-screen engine comScore's post-track, which is better than the B cinema score and 52% of 28 years later. Positive word of mouth will be high on this. Like, everyone likes it. I'm speaking on a monolith. Yes, some people dislike it. I get it. But by and large, majority. And they say this. Here's the thing. While Sony was in need of franchises and likes to prop auteur-driven content, this is a very niche horror. I mean, they're just sort of playing defense for it. I'm surprised Deadline didn't mention the Netflix deal. I'm really surprised. Like, very, very, very surprised. But yeah, look, Avatar Fire and Ash did all right. You know. Still hasn't broke $400 million domestically, so I think it's going to struggle. It may hit that now. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's week 5. We'll see how long it's going to be in theaters for. I guess they'll try and push that to the ends of the earth, monetary wise. Zootopia 2 still going strong. Housemaid's still going strong. It's all pretty good for these movies. All pretty good. Mighty Supreme actually did pretty damn well as well. And that's it, really. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Apparently that came back out again. Alright, awesome, I guess. Surprised that's back out. Is that for like an anniversary, isn't it? So, well, there you go. There's not much else really to say. It's nice to see that that's earning money. You know? Still coming out and earning, I mean, good money as well, right? Friday, $3.1 million. Brilliant. Not bad. 4 days, 4.1 million. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So there you go. I don't have much else to say. Is it a bomb? No, not really. Because Sony has a $7 billion plus payday from Netflix. They're not going to give a shit. It's not cope. You tell me how they're not going to factor that in. Tell me how all of their movies now doesn't have a guaranteed secondary revenue stream. All of their movies now have, you know, additional accounting to take into it. I just think they've just created a massive buffer zone. And they're laughing all the way to the bank.